Imagine using a heavy, dusty rock as a literal doorstop in your house for nearly a century.
Yeah, just sitting there on the floor.
Right, just sitting there. And then, you wipe away the grime one afternoon and realize it is actually the oldest known cave painting in your country's entire history.
I mean, that is wild.
It is, and that is exactly what the scientific community just experienced. Now, when we sit down with a stack of sources for you, we often end up navigating this kind of relentless drumbeat of complex, usually pretty heavy global challenges.
Yeah, that's basically the default setting for how information is delivered to us right now.
Exactly. But today, the stack of reports we have is a massive, honestly revitalizing departure from that cycle. We are looking at a collection of factual, entirely evidence-based reports that are completely devoid of doom framing.
Which is so refreshing.
It really is.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is exploring a theme we are calling the resilience of second chances.
I love that title.
Thanks. We are basically looking at systems, objects, and realities that the world had just completely written off, but which have suddenly come roaring back.
And, we live in this environment of profound information overload, right? Where our brains are evolutionarily hardwired to prioritize threats.
We naturally look for the danger.
Exactly. We naturally fixate on what is falling apart. But when we consciously step back and examine these specific patterns of resilience, these verifiable comeback stories, it provides a really vital counter-narrative for you as a listener.
Because it shows that the world isn't just ending.
Right. It demonstrates that the trajectory of our history, our ecosystems, and even our scientific capabilities, it is not just a one-way street toward degradation. There are robust underlying mechanisms of recovery at play all around us.
So let us start with our first category, rediscovering and preserving the past. We are going back to 1928.
Okay, 1928.
Yeah. Someone finds a striped rock in the UK. Researchers look at it, document it, and file it away with the general consensus that, well, it is just a rock displaying natural geological striping.
Just some weird colored lines.
Right. Fast forward 98 years to today. That exact same rock has been reclassified. It is not natural at all. It is the UK's oldest known cave painting.
98 years of sitting in an archive, just hiding in plain sight.
Just sitting there.
What is crucial to understand here is the mechanism of how a mistake like that persists for nearly a century. I mean, in 1928, researchers saw reddish lines and assumed they were looking at natural iron oxide seeping through the limestone.
Because that happens a lot, right?
Right. It is a perfectly reasonable assumption for the time.
Okay.
The object itself never changed. What changed was the analytical lens.
Oh, like the technology they used to look at.
Exactly. Modern researchers did not just look closer. They used entirely different tools. By applying techniques like infrared spectroscopy, they were able to actually map the molecular composition of the surface.
Wow.
Yeah. And they discovered that the pigment was not a natural geological bleed, but rather an applied mixture with a specific chemical binder that absolutely proves human manipulation.
Okay, I hear what you are saying about the shift in analytical tools, but that feels like a bit of a cop-out for the scientific community, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, are you telling me 3 generations of archaeologists just did not look closely enough? Or was the technology fundamentally lacking? I mean, why does it take nearly a century to realize what is sitting right in front of us?
That is a very fair point.
It just makes me wonder how often our hardened assumptions blind us to the truth until this, second chance at observation finally happens.
Well, it is less about laziness and more about the calcification of knowledge. When a recognized expert in 1928 writes natural formation on an official ledger, that label becomes the baseline reality for the next 3 generations of researchers.
So nobody even thinks to question it.
Nobody questions the ledger because the brain literally filters out information that contradicts established facts. Our assumptions act as cognitive blinders. We only see what we expect to see.
So they expected a natural rock, and that is all they saw.
Right. It isn't until someone comes along and says, wait, natural geology doesn't create geometric pigment patterns like this, that the blinders finally come off. The second chance here was a moment of profound, unclouded observation, obviously aided by spectroscopy, that finally broke through decades of institutional momentum.
That makes a lot of sense. Now we see a totally different mechanism of historical preservation in our next source.
Yes, moving from the archive to the hillside.
Exactly. We are looking at England's famous chalk giant. This is a massive ancient figure carved directly into the hillsides. Now, it does not need to be rediscovered because it is massive and highly visible.
You literally cannot miss it.
Right, but it was fading, actively disappearing into the landscape. The report notes it is currently receiving a staggering 17-ton chalk makeover to prevent it from vanishing completely.
17 tons. I mean, this represents the other fundamental type of second chance. The cave painting required passive patience and a shift in perception. Yeah,
Just waiting for the right tools.
exactly. But the chalk giant requires massive active intervention. The environment is constantly trying to reclaim that monument. Rain washes the chalk away, the soil shifts around, grass creeps over the borders.
Nature takes it back.
Yeah, but what you are seeing with 17 tons of chalk is the physical labor required to halt natural degradation.
It really tells us that preservation is not a passive state of being. It is this continuous, honestly exhausting act of human defiance against entropy. We have to literally haul 17 tons of crushed rock up a hill just to maintain a snapshot of our own past.
Yep.
Because if we stop pushing back, the landscape just erases it.
Entropy is the perfect word for it, actually. In physics, entropy is the gradual decline into disorder.
Things falling apart.
Exactly. Without the continuous infusion of energy, which in this case is human labor,
Yeah.
the organized lines of the chalk giant will inevitably succumb to the disorganized state of a grassy hill. History, in this context, only survives because we choose to actively, repeatedly save it.
That concept of defying entropy bridges us perfectly to the staggering reality of the natural world.
It really does.
Because if human history requires us to constantly fight against natural degradation like hauling, all that chalk biology actually possesses a shocking built-in ability to script its own comebacks the moment we give it even a fraction of an opportunity. Biology is essentially an anti-entropy engine.
Oh, that is a great way to put it. When we talk about natural comebacks, we are transitioning away from human curation. We're talking about inherent biological drive.
Life wanting to survive.
Right, life systems are mathematically wired to expand and complexify.
Well, the numbers in our sources for this biological expansion are massive. Let us look at the sky first. An endangered California condor has just flown into Oregon.
Which is huge.
Right. It might sound like a simple migration event to some, but it is the first time a California condor has been recorded in Oregon in 122 years. This is a bird that was on the absolute razor's edge of total extinction.
122 years means generations of people in Oregon lived and died without ever seeing that silhouette in the sky.
Wow. Yeah, when you put it like that.
To understand how significant this is, we have to look at the ecological chain reaction that made it possible. A condor flying to Oregon is not just a bird getting lost on a windy day. It is an indicator of apex predator territorial expansion.
Because they need a lot of space.
Exactly. For decades, the condor population was artificially suppressed, largely due to lead poisoning from scavenging hunted animals.
Right. The lead ammunition issue.
Yeah. The mechanism of this comeback relied on targeted habitat protection and a massive effort to reduce lead ammunition in the environment. Once the core population in California stabilized and began hitting the carrying capacity of their immediate territory, well, the younger birds were naturally forced out to find new thermal corridors and foraging grounds.
So it acts like a pressure valve releasing.
Precisely.
We removed the specific environmental ring block, and the species immediately utilized its biological drive to reclaim its historical map.
They did what they are wired to do.
And we are seeing this exact same drive play out on a global structural scale. Our sources confirm that global mangrove loss is officially reversing.
This is one of my favorite reports.
It is incredible. We are not just slowing down the destruction of these coastal forests. The trend has entirely inverted. Mangroves are now larger and denser globally than they were 20 years ago.
Reversing a 20-year global trend of deforestation requires a fundamental shift in ecological momentum. The mechanics of mangrove forests make them incredibly unique.
How so?
Well, their root systems, they're known as pneumatophores, they actually grow upward out of the mud and water.
Wait, they grow up?
Yeah, upward. And they physically slow down tidal waters, which causes suspended dirt and sediment to drop out of the water column. Over time, they literally build their own landmass.
They make their own islands, basically.
Essentially, yes. If you halt the indiscriminate clear-cutting for coastal development or, shrimp farming, mangroves do not just passively grow back like a lawn, they actively terraform the coastline. They create a buffer against rising sea levels and trap immense amounts of carbon in the sediment.
I look at the sheer scale of those two events, 122 years for a single species territorial return and a 20-year global reversal for entire forest ecosystems. And I try to visualize the mechanics of it.
Right.
It feels less like gradual healing and more like the kinetic energy of a heavy-duty rubber band.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, it is like we as a species have stretched global ecosystems to the absolute breaking point. We think the tension is gone, but there is this immense stored energy just waiting to snap back the moment we release even a fraction of the pressure.
The stored kinetic energy analogy is mechanistically very accurate. For decades, the narrative was a straight downward line. Fewer condors, fewer mangroves. But ecosystems are complex adaptive networks.
They adapt to survive.
Right. When a specific stressor drops below a critical threshold, the biological drive to reproduce and expand does not just resume, it often accelerates into the newly available space.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second here, though.
Okay, go for it.
Global environmental metrics are notoriously noisy, right? Are we just looking at statistical flukes? Did a couple of condors catch a lucky tailwind? And did we just have a good rainy season for some coastal trees?
That is a common skepticism.
Wait, because how do we know this points to a larger pattern of planetary resilience rather than just isolated anomalies that happen to look good on paper?
Well, the data methodologies rule out statistical flukes. You cannot fake a global reversal in mangrove density when it is being measured by multispectral satellite imaging over a 2-decade period.
Because the satellites see everything.
Exactly. That requires sustained systemic biological growth across multiple continents simultaneously. And the condor expansion is the result of decades of painstaking breeding and chemical mitigation finally reaching a critical biological mass.
So it is deliberate.
Very deliberate.
Uh,
What we usually ignore, because it does not fit the daily cycle of crisis news, is that nature's default state is recovery. Life wants to live. When we look at these comebacks, we are witnessing the sheer stubborn tenacity of biology asserting itself.
That tenacity brings us to our final frontier for this deep dive. We have talked about the deep past and we have talked about the natural world. But here is where we push the absolute boundaries of what is possible.
The scientific frontier.
Exactly. If nature can reverse decades of decline on its own, science is currently hacking human biology and astrophysics to give us completely unprecedented second chances.
And this is where the timeline of the comeback changes dramatically. We are no longer waiting 98 years or 122 years. We are actively forcing the breakthroughs right now.
Let us examine the report on human health.
Right.
There is a recent clinical trial for type 1 diabetes using a treatment called tegoprubart.
Yes.
Now, in clinical trials, especially dealing with complex autoimmune and metabolic conditions, a 50% efficacy rate is considered a massive victory. 80% is a miracle.
Absolutely.
In this specific trial, 12 out of 12 participants are now off external insulin entirely.
I mean, 12 out of 12. The statistical weight of that in a biological trial just cannot be overstated.
It is 100%.
Right. Human bodies are chaotic, highly variable systems. To hit a 100% success rate in a trial phase suggests the researchers have not just treated a symptom, but have successfully intervened at the foundational mechanism of the disease itself.
Let us dig into that mechanism. A lot of people hear diabetes treatment and probably assume it just means a better insulin pump or, a longer-lasting injection. But tegoprubart is fundamentally different, isn't it?
Entirely different. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. The patient's own immune system incorrectly identifies the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas as foreign invaders and then destroys them.
It attacks itself.
Right. Now, tegoprubart is a monoclonal antibody. Rather than just replacing the missing insulin, it actively blocks the specific cellular pathway, like the communication channel, that tells the immune system to attack in the first place.
So treating autoimmune diabetes with tegoprubart is less like putting on a new pair of prescription glasses and more like changing the locks on a secure building.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it.
The immune system is essentially a confused security guard that keeps attacking its own employees inside the pancreas. This drug does not fire the guard, it just takes away the key to that specific room so the beta cells can finally do their jobs in peace and produce insulin naturally.
That is the exact physiological reality. By changing the locks, the underlying pancreatic function is given a second chance to operate as it was originally designed.
Which is life-changing.
Completely. We are stripping away a biological limitation that, until very recently, was considered a permanent, lifelong tether to external medication.
Well, from the microscopic mechanisms of human cells, we were zooming all the way out to the cosmos. Astronomers have just detected magnetospheres on exoplanets for the absolute first time in history.
A magnetosphere is a magnetic field surrounding a planet. Earth has a robust one, and it is the primary reason our atmosphere hasn't been stripped away by solar winds.
So it keeps us alive.
It is the ultimate planetary shield, deflecting deadly stellar radiation. Finding them on exoplanets is a monumental shift in astrophysics.
But magnetic fields are inherently invisible. How do you detect an invisible shield surrounding a planet that is light years away from our solar system?
By listening for the invisible signals they create. When a star emits stellar winds, which is essentially a stream of charged plasma, those particles eventually slam into the magnetic field of an orbiting planet.
Okay.
The collision accelerates the particles, and that interaction emits a very specific type of low-frequency radio wave. Astronomers realized they didn't need to look for the planet itself. They needed to tune our most sensitive radio telescopes to listen for the auroral radio emissions generated by that violent collision.
Wait, so we had to figure out how to listen for the crash to prove the invisible wall was there.
Precisely. Detecting these radio waves means we are no longer just cataloging dead, irradiated rocks in space. We now possess the capability to identify the specific protective shields that make life possible across the galaxy.
That is incredible.
It really is a second chance at understanding the true mechanics of distant worlds. It shifts our perspective from a barren universe to one potentially filled with shielded, habitable environments.
You know, the contrast in the timelines we have discussed today is truly striking. Think about the scope of the sources we have unpacked. We waited 98 years to understand that a striped rock was actually a priceless cave painting.
Yeah, almost a century.
98 years of staring blindly at it because our assumptions were wrong. But right now, today, science is completely rewriting autoimmune diabetes care and capturing the invisible radio signals of alien magnetic fields in real time.
Is a massive shift.
So is our fundamental capacity for discovery actually accelerating at this breakneck pace, or are we just finally looking in the right places?
Well, it is a synthesis of both. Our capacity is objectively accelerating because our tools are exponentially better. Infrared spectroscopy, monoclonal antibodies, radio telescope arrays. The physical tools are doing the heavy lifting that was literally impossible a century ago. But those tools are entirely useless without the right questions. The reason we are seeing these sudden massive breakthroughs is that we are no longer accepting the old baselines.
We refuse to accept the ledger that said the rock was natural. We refuse to accept that the chalk giant had to wash away.
And we didn't accept that diabetes management had to be a lifelong tether to insulin, so we looked for a way to reprogram the immune response. We didn't accept that exoplanets were just distant, unreadable shadows, so we tuned our instruments to catch the radio waves of their magnetospheres.
It all comes back to that refusal.
Yes. The true acceleration of human discovery happens when advanced technology intersects with a complete refusal to accept old limits.
A refusal to accept old limits. I mean, that is the perfect summary of what this entire stack of sources represents. Let us take a moment to look at the sheer weight of the numbers we have covered in this deep dive, because they are staggering when you lay them all out.
They really are.
We are talking about 98 years of waiting for a dusty rock to reveal its true identity. We are talking about 17 tons of chalk being moved by sheer physical effort to fight off the entropy of a fading giant.
Yep.
122 years of absence before a single endangered bird returned to the Oregon sky. 20 years of reversing global, planetary scale mangrove deforestation.
Yeah.
And a flawless 12 out of 12 clinical trial success rate that fundamentally changes the mechanism of how we treat autoimmune disease.
Each one of those numbers serves as a data point on a very specific map. And what that map proves to you is that things we have definitively written off, things we labeled as gone, broken, natural, or completely impossible, retain an astonishing capacity to come roaring back.
So as we wrap up, what does this all mean for you navigating your own influx of daily information?
I think it leaves you with a deeply personal and highly provocative question to mull over. We have seen the evidence today that ancient rocks can hold hidden masterpieces if you just change your lens. Fading historical giants can be restored with concerted effort. Endangered coastal ecosystems and apex predators can snap back the moment pressure is released.
And supposedly incurable biological conditions can be entirely rewritten at the cellular level.
Exactly. So the question for you is, What in your own life or in your own professional field have you prematurely written off? What dusty doorstop in your own attic is just sitting there, waiting for you to drop your assumptions and give it a second chance?
What a brilliant reminder that maybe the muddy waters of our own lives and the seemingly permanent roadblocks in our own fields are not nearly as fixed as we assume they are. Sometimes the complex network just needs a little slack to snap back into place. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Remember, the relentless drumbeat of things falling apart is only half the story. Keep questioning the established baselines, look for the underlying mechanisms of recovery, and keep your eyes open for those hidden comebacks in the world around you. We'll catch you on the next one.